Welcome to the Center for Opioid Research, Education, and Outreach webinar series. This program is made possible by a grant from the Alabama Department of Public Health in cooperation with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Thank you for joining me today to learn a little bit about the Good Samaritan Law. My name is Cherry Jackson, and I'm a professor of pharmacy at Auburn University, and I'm also a clinical professor in the Department of Psychiatry at University of Alabama, Birmingham. Today's presentation is brought to you by the Alabama Department of Public Health and COACH, which is the Center of Opioid Research, Education, and Outreach. So I just want to give you a disclosure. I don't have any financial disclosure or any conflict of interest with the presentation today. So I have several objectives for you, and when we complete this presentation, I want you to be able to describe the Good Samaritan Act, want you to discuss how this law would apply to helping someone suffering from an overdose, and I'm going to give you a few pertinent resources that hopefully you can use when it comes time to, if you have a situation where you need to help somebody in an overdose situation. The Good Samaritan Law is found not only nationally, but it's found internationally, and it's found here in Alabama as well. And a Good Samaritan is considered to be somebody who stops and helps others when they're in trouble, especially strangers. And the Good Samaritan Law is to basically provide somebody that stops and helps somebody in an accident or injury situation without any fear of liability. And so the purpose of the law itself is to reduce the fear that bystanders sometimes have to help somebody who's been ill or injured, and then to encourage people to come to the aid of others without being concerned about any kind of litigation or being sued. So the Good Samaritan laws are different in different states and in different countries, and in some places it's actually against the law not to help somebody in a situation where they are ill or injured. And some states only protect those who have first aid training and recertification in that training. And if the Good Samaritan expects any kind of payment, then they're not considered to be a Good Samaritan. Now, Alabama has its own specific Good Samaritan Act, and interestingly, the people who can render aid at the scene of an accident are doctors, dentists, nurses, the EMT, members of the police or fire department or state troopers, somebody that's been a medic in the military, chiropractors, and public education employees. In the case of a cardiac arrest, a bystander can provide CPR, and they can also use an automated defibrillator. Now, as long as that person is acting in good faith and they do what any prudent person would do, that's considered to be a Good Samaritan. Now, I want to talk specifically about the Alabama overdose prevention laws. And first I'll tell you a little bit about nationally in about 44 states there is an overdose prevention law. And as you know, overdoses of opioids are a cause of injury, according to the CDC, and bystanders to an opioid overdose may fear getting involved because they might be afraid that they're going to get arrested because you're doing something with illicit medications. And so to encourage individuals to call for assistance, most states have developed a Good Samaritan or 911 immunity law. And these laws are to provide immunity or legal protection for people who call for help in an overdose emergency and when they reasonably believe that someone's experienced an overdose situation and they are reporting an emergency in good faith. Now, the requirement for immunity often includes staying on the scene of the accident or the overdose until emergency personnel arrive. Now, Alabama specifically has a law, it's HB 208, and they allow an opioid antagonist which is Narcan, also called naloxone, to be dispensed by a pharmacist to an individual who's at risk of an overdose, or family, friends, law enforcement, or other individuals that are in a position to help somebody that might be at risk of an overdose. You know, as a bystander, for example. Now, physicians and dentists can prescribe these opioid antagonists, and those prescribing, dispensing, and administering the antagonists are immune from any kind of prosecution. Now, an individual can, again, give the opioid antagonist as long as they have a feeling that the person is having an opioid overdose and that they provide reasonable care in administering the antagonist. And the person administering the antagonist needs to be trained in how to give the antagonist. So they should have reasonable understanding of how to administer the naloxone. And an individual can't be arrested for a controlled substance offense if law enforcement became aware of the offense only because the individual was seeking medical assistance for that individual. So, for example, if people were using opioids together and one person overdoses and 911 is called, emergency personnel is called, that person can't be arrested because they were using at that time because they are helping somebody in an overdose situation. In addition, the law says that you should be acting in good faith, and you should use your own name when contacting the authorities. And then you also, in Alabama, need to stay with that person until help arrives. Now, I have a few pertinent resources for you. I think most importantly is a standing order for naloxone. And I'm going to show that to you in just a second, but here are the links to those resources. These are all great resources for finding out how to use naloxone, how to get the training to use naloxone, how to get the prescription, and then how to get the naloxone. This is what the standing order looks like. You could go to that very first link that I gave you and pull this up. It's on page 6. And this is very simple. You just fill this form out and you could take it to a pharmacy. The links I gave you, the Jefferson County Department of Health gives you a link to pharmacies that are participating in this, so you can take it to them and they can fill that for you. There are just a few references along with the resources, and just really want to thank you for listening to this presentation, and hopefully you've learned a little bit of something about the Good Samaritan Law. Thank you.